Yes, I'm here in Malaysia now, but this isn't actually the first time I've been privileged to live in Malaysia before. I actually first came here in 1996. And as anybody that was like a functional adult at that time remembers, this was a really heady time to be alive because everybody was just starting to really get into this World Wide Web thing. And there were so many possibilities for all of us, and we were just so excited, and everything's like so fun and new and shiny. And we also got to see the beginnings of the depths we could see humanity sink to. So for our generation, we didn't have to worry about trolls, but what we did have were flame wars, where you would have individuals that were just being mean to each other in chat rooms and in emails back and forth. And this was also the first time that we got introduced to a certain Nigerian prince who was looking for a man of good standing to help liberate his millions from the bank. So it's in exactly this kind of environment that my wife received an email. And that email actually looked towards, well, it talked about a children's home in the Klang Valley. And this home, was in dire straits. They needed help. They needed financial help. They needed groceries. They needed supplies. The children were underfed. They went to sleep crying every night from hunger. Their clothes were torn and worn. They didn't have shoes. They were dirty because the water had been cut off to the home. And so my wife is a very generous and compassionate person. But she's nobody's fool. And she did her due diligence. And she somehow, before Google was easily acceptable, found out that, yes, this is an actual home. And yes, the people that are listed in the email are legitimately members of the caretaking committee for the home. So once she was satisfied that this was a legit home that could use our help, she forwarded the email back to them and said, "We would like to help. Can we meet with you to discuss what you need and how we get it to you?" And so they responded to the email and said, "Yes, we'd like to talk to you. Please come in." And so she and I went, and we're sitting there in the living room of the bungalow that this home is residing in. And we're excited and we're happy, and we know that we're about to help out these kids, and it's a good feeling. And the coordinator comes out to meet us, and he is immediately in our faces. And he's saying, "How dare you say these things about my home? We work hard to take care of these kids. None of them are dirty. None of them are shoeless. They have shoes. They have good clothes. We keep them fed. I should sue you for libel." And my wife and I are looking at each other, and we're just like, wow, this went way off script. So when we get the chance to talk, we have to explain to this gentleman that we were not the originators of the email. We were responding to it. And being of the older generation from us, he was less familiar with email. And because my wife was smart enough to bring a printout, she was able to show that we weren't the originators, that this is the chain that it went through before it reached us. So once he was mollified, my wife was able to offer to feed back up the chain to inform everybody that the situation as described is not the case. Now, the other good thing that did come out of it is that there were some sundries they needed. So we were able to provide a connection for them and help get some supplies delivered. Now, the thing is that even though this particular story is nearly 3 decades old, it still highlights a certain issue that we have with our communities, where there is a problem of false information that creates harm. Now, everybody in that email chain, I believe in my heart, intended the best for this home. But the problem is that by using false information, harm was in fact created. There was harm to the image and reputation of this children's home. And if we weren't as diplomatic about the situation as we were, potentially harm to me and my wife. Now, more recently, I've had the opportunity to attend a media literacy training being held by the Asian Center in conjunction with ASEAN and with the support of Google. So at this training, the purpose of it is to help educators and community leaders work with the people they work with in order to help them figure out how to detect and debunk false information on the internet before it can cause harm. Part of the framework of this program is a term called information disorder. Now, information disorder is actually, you can break it down into 3 different types. One is malinformation. This is actually factual information, but it is used for the purpose of creating harm against a cause or an individual or a group. A very common form of this is doxing, the publication of personal details and contact information of an individual with the purpose of inciting others to harass them. Another type of information disorder is misinformation, where there is no intent to mislead or to cause harm. But the fact is that it is false information. The people forwarding it simply do not recognize that. And then disinformation, the act of aggressively changing the truth, exaggerating or taking incidents out of context, or manufacturing information that is patently false. So, misinformation is propagated usually with the intent of doing good. Most people don't want to be the villains in their own story. They want to be the hero. And misinformation usually provides the opportunity to feel that. And it's easy to think that the people that are more likely to disseminate misinformation are going to be those that are more naive or more impulsive or less educated. But the fact is that whether you are naive or cynical, educated or not, we are all still motivated by our emotions. And with that motivation by emotions, we will have a tendency to react and justify later. This is something that's demonstrated in another story of mine. Now, I'm going to use a few examples from a situation that was occurring near my hometown in Wisconsin. Some of you may remember that about 3 years ago, there was a series of riots in the US. And one of the center points of those riots was Kenosha, Wisconsin. So during those riots, there was an incident where a 17-year-old boy shot 3 suspected looters. And the next day, I was looking through my Facebook feed, and my friend, who was born near Kenosha, posted information about those people that got shot. So it described one of them as a loving father. It described another one as a distinguished military veteran. But it turns out that that particular post, everything including the names of the people that were shot, was false. Okay? So here's the interesting kicker. My friend is a researcher at the University of Chicago. I am a lecturer at UTAR. Both of us understand the need to understand facts and to avoid putting out false information. Nonetheless, this went completely under our radar. So, what about disinformation? So disinformation is when somebody is trying to completely obliterate the truth. When somebody is trying to effectively influence people into doing things that may or may not be in their best interest, but is more likely in the interest of the original person putting out the information. And this predates internet. We are familiar with disinformation in the form of propaganda. in the form of creating an outsider group that we can rally around, pushing out and saying that they are the threat. It's also a means of getting people to make poor health or financial decisions, such as in the case of looking for single source cures for conditions that do not have a single source fix. So, in the next example, this one was a situation that occurred during the Kenosha riots. And in this example, there's a few things that make this a great exercise in critical thinking and fact-checking and actually make it easier. The first one is that there's a lot of details that are given and that are available to cross-check on the internet. The name of the auto collision company is listed. The name of the owner of the collision company is listed. Within the picture, we can see what they're talking about with the different logos and spray paint images on it. But we can also see the license plate, the temporary license, and the dealer plate that's attached. All of these are easily found on the internet and verified. Also, the pictures that are being taken can verify the location of the vehicle within that said lot. Okay? So, this theory that's written here is that this van was provided by a secret organization in order to help firebomb Kenosha during the riots, and that it was used to transport 40 large containers of flammable liquid. Now, in this case, we've verified all these other facts about the van. What about the facts that weren't as verifiable from what's written here and from the imagery itself? There's 2 points that really stick out and make this something that would appear to be a threat. One of them is that it was to be involved in a mass arson attack. The other is that it was potentially funded by a mysterious organization. Now, the thing is that even though I've run out of information here, there's still visual information that can be used, and there's other sources to go to. I had choices to, for example, talk to the local press, to the papers and to the local TV stations, and let them know, hey, maybe there is a story here. I had the option of calling up the police department, but they were kind of busy trying to keep Kenosha from burning to the ground, and in most cases, police will not discuss cases with people not involved with it. I could have gone online and checked the Kenosha courts and their records, but because I didn't have a name or a docket number associated with it, I couldn't get far with that either. So that leaves me with talking to the owner of the shop, because they have a business email address. And the thing is that being a business person, I got back exactly the response that I would expect from somebody that's expecting service from a business but not going to pay. I heard nothing. So the thing is that even though I didn't pursue the option of local journalism, the reason why it became less necessary was because of one other clue within the visuals here. When looking at the shop that it was at, it was clear that there was open access to the road. The only fencing involved was the one that the van was parked next to. The fact that it is open means that the vehicle is not in a sanctioned impound yard, which is necessary if you're going to be dealing with evidence in a crime. Anybody that's watched CSI is familiar with the term chain of custody. And chain of custody applies to vehicles that are impounded in the commission of a crime, which means that this is not an impounded vehicle. Further, it's a vehicle that, in this narrative, was being used to cross state lines in order to commit a felony. That means the FBI is involved, and you know that they're going to impound it. So for those reasons, we can look at this and say that this falls into the category of disinformation. We're further convinced by the fact that there's clearly an agenda stated here. In the wording used, there's no question about this guy's opinion of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. So the wording is also important. Even if there's no other visual cues, you can look at the wording of post or information that's coming to you and try to determine if it is actually relying on the facts that are presented or if it is actually trying to manipulate you. Now, one really fun way of doing this is actually to use word cloud generators. And these are fantastic because what they do is they take all the words out of context and then they show you which words are used the most within the text that you put in, and out of context, you're able to actually isolate each word and get familiar with the meaning to it, and the meaning behind it. Now, in this case, these are two posts that were put up within a couple of days of each other. One of them is from the Black Lives Matter group in Milwaukee, and one of them is from a Kenosha militia. Now, they're both about the same time frame, and they both have about the same amount of words, 25 to 40 words each. So you can see which ones are actually using words that are trying to inspire a call to action, inspire fear, and which ones are trying to state things in a more factual manner. So using this type of tool, you're able to then determine which words are there to provide you with objective statements and which words are there to trigger your emotions. Okay, now there are 4 basic strategies for combating information disorder. And those strategies include quality journalism, media literacy, media ethics, and fact-checking. Now, media ethics and quality journalism, along with fact-checking, are in the domain of the content producers. Now, that means that we rely on them to get the facts right. We rely on them to not be trying to manipulate situations and stories, to be objective, and to double check that things are accurate. Now, the problem is that we can't always rely on that, even from traditional media sources. Traditional media sources rely on speed of delivery of information. Sometimes fact-checking and ethics get pushed to the side. In terms of us as consumers, that means that we have an additional obligation to educate ourselves, to become more media literate, because we not only have the obligation to protect ourselves from false information, but also to prevent further misinformation spread or disinformation spread by fact-checking what's there. Okay? Because once we forward something, that's the power of social media. We become the content creators, which makes us as accountable as the original poster for what's being put out there. So there are a variety of tools that are available to both help you in directly assessing things, to reverse image search, and tools that also are available to help sharpen your skills with creative thinking and fact-checking. And if you're interested in receiving more information about those, any of you are welcome to contact me at my email address, gandolfo@utar.edu.my, and I'll be happy to forward you all the links that were provided to me during my media literacy training. And for those of you that would like to continue to help the Asian Center with their work, there is a post-hoc assessment that you can take. It's very easy, about 10 questions, and for people that do complete it, you're entitled to receive a certificate. Now, nothing that I have talked to you guys about today is actually going to help you win any arguments on the internet, because people on the internet argue based off of a variety of cognitive biases, and there's not enough time to discuss all 50 of them. There's not even enough time in an 18-minute talk to list all 50 cognitive biases. So somebody that's dealing with Dunning-Kruger effect is not going to submit to the same arguments as somebody that's suffering from cognitive bias, who's not going to go through the same is not going to relinquish the ideas that they're holding when they're having cognitive dissonance. So the way to handle when you find false information online is to consider sources. Consider the context in which you're getting it. Okay? So, is it coming from the algorithm? Is it one of those suggested for you posts? Is it coming from a friend? Somebody that's originating the post that's close to you? Is it harmful to another group of people or to individuals that follow the advice that's posted? So, it's tempting when people find false information to respond directly to it. Part of the power of social media. And the people lacking in media ethics play into that because they will be deliberately generating false information specifically to get your attention, specifically to get your response and build traffic. So to avoid that situation, you don't feed the trolls. Instead, do your research, do your fact-checking, and if it is harmful in any way, report it. Report it to the platform. If you're wrong, no harm, no foul. They'll check it out. It'll be reinstated after the investigation. If you're right, you help to stop the spread of disinformation. Good job. The other thing is that if you wish to comment on it, don't put it out there on their comments. If you're comfortable with it, put it out there on your own page. So it's great to have this talk. I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to introduce this topic or to expand on this topic for some of you. It's too short to explain all of the options on how to proceed, but the main thing is that we do need to start with ourselves. Each and every one of us needs to apply critical thinking and be aware of exactly what messages we're receiving, because every message that we get does have an agenda, and how we choose to react to that is the choice between following somebody else's agenda or following our own. Thank you.